Joe Rogan's podcast has become one of the wildest spaces for unexpected jaw-dropping conversations. These are the most mind-blowing moments in Joe Rogan history, just like this moment with Joe Rogan and Neil deGrasse Tyson.
There's a magpie bird. There's a bottle of water in some playground area, and it goes up to the bottle of water and it dips its beak in to drink from it. See it? Okay, it goes in and drinks from it. To watch. It's going to drink. But the problem is there's a limit to how far its beak can reach inside of it. And so it gets a stone that fits inside the bottle, which raises the water level so that its beak can continue to drink from it. This is some Archimedean crazy stuff going on.
So right there, you just watched a bird essentially reenact a physics experiment in real time. This is a magpie raising the water level so it can drink. But what's interesting is this bird wasn't trained to do this at all. These birds have super strong problem-solving skills, and this is something that they've learned through evolution.
The magpie, by those in the know, is ranked among the smartest of birds. This is doing something I think humans wouldn't even think to do.
Probably many humans.
Right. How did they teach you where humans were in the tree of life when you were in school? Like we were the smartest or the biggest brained? Well, how did they describe it to you?
Yeah, we're the top of the food chain.
What did they say about our brains?
Well, it's the size of our brains that makes us so superior.
Yeah, but dolphins' brains are bigger, so.
Yeah, 40% larger.
But brain to body weight ratio, then we're the highest. When you divide the weight of the brain by the weight of the body, we win.
And Neil is right about this point here because brain size alone doesn't explain intelligence, because elephants have bigger brains than humans, but their neurons are wired differently, while birds evolved from an entirely different architecture and they achieve similar results.
We beat out whales, we beat out dolphins, we beat out elephants. So we walk away saying we're at the top. However, we do not have the highest brain to body weight ratio among animals, only among mammals. The magpie has a higher brain to body weight ratio than humans do. As do all other mid-sized birds. So that rule that put us at the top was specifically for mammals. And to say, well, we're at the top, really?
But it wasn't as crazy as this moment about the Eye of the Sahara in Atlantis. So Joe's guess here points to this structure in this African country, also called the Eye of the Sahara. And he says that this is the most likely site of Atlantis, and this is where Atlantis was.
And Atlantis has always been the big one. That has been the one that everybody talked about, was this incredibly advanced civilization, and no one can figure out where it is.
Atlantis was said to be an empire made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land.
Jamie, will you pull up the photos of these concentric circles?
When I first saw this, I was like, what the is that? By the way, you see that white? All those white blemishes? That's salt. This was under the ocean.
Now, scientifically, this area is considered a natural geological dome, which eroded over millions of years. Plato described Atlantis as a circular island with alternating rings of land and water, which you can actually see here.
Is there a natural explanation for this formation?
Yes. So it is considered to be mysterious. They're not 100% certain of it. However, the consensus is that it was a volcanic dome that had risen and collapsed multiple times, like 100 million years ago. Some had originally thought that maybe it was an impact site from an asteroid or perhaps, but there's no evidence for it.
Describe what we're looking at here.
Okay, so what you're looking at is the total barren desert of Mauritania, Africa.
Why is it blue?
It's a satellite imagery that they enhanced in order for you to see the difference in elevation and the actual structure to itself.
Okay, so if there was water in this area, you would see it this way, that it would be these concentric circles that are raised above the water, and then the water would be inside of it like that.
This is not trying to represent water. So that blue is actually picking up on salt.
His guest says here that it is salt, and it was actually confirmed to be salt, proving that this area was once flooded and covered by water, further proving the point that this could be where Atlantis was.
But I mean, it used to be underwater, right? It's salt because it was underwater.
That's what I believe, and that's what makes the most sense to me. So those areas with the most white blemishes happen to be the areas that are the lowest in elevation, which to me tells me that salt water had settled there. But not only that, Joe. So if you go to Google Earth, you'll be able to find this quite quickly. It stands out, and it's why they call it the Eye of Africa or the Eye of the Sahara. All that white is salt. In fact, I had a friend, Josh Sigurdsson, that went out there and tasted that off the fucking ground. That's salt. Because a lot of people say this was never under the ocean, and I'm like, all right, you see all that? Even Randall Carlson himself. So he analyzed this site, and you see all those striations? So that's all water erosion, Joe.
And this theory taps into something even deeper, the mystery of lost knowledge, because civilizations rise and fall with catastrophic events, just like the Younger Dryas cold period 12,000 years ago may have erased entire cultures that we don't even know about.
Yeah, scroll right in. You're going to see those same water ripples. Keep going, because this is what you're looking at here is panned out. This is many miles. Like Like, keep in mind, this structure is 30
Oh,
miles
that's
across.
crazy. That looks like the bottom of the ocean, like if you see where the water breaks on the sand.
Yep.
Wow,
There's
that's
better
crazy.
pictures. And that, just to clarify, that white is salt. Because that's, a lot of people don't know, Joe, that the Sahara Desert wasn't a thing until approximately 5,000 years ago. The Sahara goes back and forth from green to desert approximately every 20,000 years. They believe it has something to do with the Earth's tilt.
Everything he's saying here does make sense because the structure of Atlantis is that it had multiple rings around it, which you can see here in these images. And then he showed the picture of the desert with the waves and the sand, which could indicate that there was water there at one point in time.
So this whole area, because people are like, well, that's not Atlantis. I'm like, well, first of all, the Sahara Desert was a lush green tropical paradise, which had the largest known freshwater lakes ever known to have existed. For example, Mega Lake Chad, which is 3 times more water surface than all of the North American Great Lakes combined. Big sucker.
Holy shit.
When you see this, people have to imagine that this area was once green, because one of the arguments I make is that the fact that that salt is on top of that dirt, to me, is indicative that the ocean flowed over here far more recently than what people think.
So he's saying here that this African country was once completely covered by water, and the evidence for this is that there's salt all over this area in this African country. And I really like how Joe's guest isn't just making wild claims, he's backing up his claims with evidence and proof, and even showing Joe the actual structure.
How wide is this structure?
The whole circle itself is just shy of 30 miles.
So the whole thing is 30 miles, which would be like the size of a city.
Right. Some people will say that this is too big according to Plato's description. The question becomes, is it big enough to be a city with possibly millions of people? Because the way it was described is that it was a city that was said to be busy all day, all night, rich in trade, with languages spoken from all over. So I'm like, okay, that would imply millions of people. So if this was indeed an ancient or a site of an ancient civilization, they're obviously not going to have skyscrapers. So it would have to be an area big enough to sustain that many people, and the Richat structure certainly does.
But this next moment might be the most insane of all, because in 1998, workers renovating Benjamin Franklin's London home discovered over 1,200 human bones buried underneath, and making us wonder, was one of America's most important founding fathers a serial killer?
Dude, you ever hear about what Ben Franklin was? Okay, that's a different story, but
What did he do?
you never heard that, like, what he was found in, they found in his house?
No.
Like, tons of bodies, bro.
What?
Ben Franklin, they found tons of bodies in his...
Ben Franklin was a serial killer?
No, he was, like, doing some weird dude. Body
Like
stuff.
experimenting with bodies?
Yeah.
Is this real? Was Ben Franklin's basement filled with skeletons? Repairs on Franklin's old London house turned up 1,200 pieces of bone from at least 15 people. Holy shit.
Historians were able to conclude that the bones actually came from anatomy experiments. Franklin had actually found a surgeon friend who ran an underground medical school, but at the time, dissecting bodies was considered taboo and often illegal, so cadavers were obtained through grave robbing.
By the way, this is from the Smithsonian. This is not some wacky conspiracy. For nearly 2 decades leading up to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Franklin lived in London in a house on 36 Craven Street. More than 200 years later, 15 bodies were found in the basement, buried in a secret windowless room beneath the garden. In 1998, conservationists were doing repairs on 36 Craven, looking to turn Franklin's old haunt into a museum. A 1 meter wide, 1 meter deep pit, over 1,200 pieces of bone were retrieved. Remnants of more than a dozen bodies, 6 were children.
It's pretty crazy to think that Ben Franklin, America's founding fathers, was doing this, but the fact that some of the remains were children is even creepier. Just imagine living in this house and underneath you find human remains. And Joe jokes here about how science used to be extremely hardcore, and it's true because people back then were willing to break the rules to learn more about the human body.
Forensic investigation showed that the bones dated to Franklin's day. Holy shit. The most plausible explanation is not mass murder, but an anatomy school. Oh, just an anatomy school.
Yeah, and we're just gonna bury them downstairs.
A steady supply of human bodies was hard to come by legally, so Houston, Hunter, and Fields' other pioneers had to turn to grave robbing, either paying professional resurrection men to procure cadavers or digging them up themselves to get their hands on specimens.
The fact that one of America's founding fathers has skeletons laying around his house is mind-blowing mind-blowing in and of itself. How are you even supposed to study anatomy, especially at this time period, without being hands-on? If there weren't a lot of ways to study anatomy legally at the time, then people would have to resort to these illegal methods such as grave robbing.
When he was done with them, Houston simply buried whatever was left of the bodies in the basement rather than sneak them out for disposal elsewhere and risk getting caught and prosecuted for dissection and grave robbing. Could you imagine if you're my friend and we live together and I say, Sam, what are you up to? You're like, bro, we got to find out how people work and there's only one way to do it. We got to look at bodies. Whoa, how are you going to do that? We got to find a place where we can legally or secretly look at bodies. Well, I got a basement. Okay, so what do we do with the bodies? We'll bury them, bro.
But one of the craziest moments was this moment here. Joe's guest talks about volunteers in DMT studies reporting remarkably similar experiences, fully entering another realm, meeting other entities, and coming back with stories that almost sound coordinated. And they sound so similar to each other that it can't be a coincidence.
We had dinner together in London and you were speaking about research that's being done on dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, that's happening at Imperial College, and what's happening is they are legally being given DMT at Imperial College, which is one of the leading research institutes in the UK. For the first time ever, they're not looking to find out other possible therapeutic outcomes of this. They're actually looking at the experience itself. It's very well known, anybody who's used DMT is going to have entity encounters, part animal, part human in form.
DMT is one of the most powerful psychedelics, which is found in plants and is even produced in trace amounts in mammals. And researchers at the Imperial College of London are now mapping its effects on brain scans and clinical reports. What's crazy about this is how consistent the testimonies are, because volunteers describe geometric worlds, shapes, and intelligent beings that are not of this earth, and these encounters seem more real than reality itself.
DMT, as I'm sure you know, Joe, is a very short-acting experience when you smoke it. It's about 12 minutes. You're in there, you're plunged into a completely convincing, sometimes terrifying, parallel reality, and then you're out again. But you come out with a feeling that something's been downloaded to you. In Imperial College, they found a way to keep people in the peak state of DMT for an hour. They're delivering it through drip, timed release, and they're keeping the volunteers an hour in that state. So they have time to find their way around the DMT realm. These volunteers, both men and women, are all coming back with accounts of meeting the same entities, the same world.
When multiple people are independently describing them with the same exact patterns, scientists start to take note, and we start to think that maybe there's something more to it that we don't know. Now, some skeptics can argue that it's just the brain under chemical influence, and our brain is just generating these moments and these visuals that are hardwired into our neural circuits.
Rick Strassman is open to the idea that what happens with DMT is that it alters the receiver wavelength of the brain, and that it allows us to gain access to other realities, that these encounters are not unreal. They're real on a level that we can't experience in a day-to-day state of consciousness. We have to be in an altered state of consciousness in order to experience them. And ultimately, the aim of this project is to map the DMT realm. Right there in the DMT experience, inside our own heads, we have the opportunity to encounter another world, another realm. Consciousness is an enormous mystery. DMT opens up literally a parallel world.
Leave a comment down below with the moment that you thought was the craziest. Subscribe for more.